Pleasant day to all my students, and I am Sachin Mundakil, Assistant Professor of English from New Horizon College, Kasturinagar. And today I would like to deal with you a particular chapter called Alone. It's a short story written by Sheila Barua. Okay, so we will be dealing with that particular chapter again. This is also taken from the book Perceptions to General English Course Book and Comprehension for the second semester students of Bangalore University. So BCom and BBA students. Okay, very well. Now, I have few questions. Questions like, have you ever felt loneliness in your life? Have you ever felt that you are all alone in your life and in the entire world? Philosophically, we call this kind of feeling, if at all you have, as existential anxiety or the existential vacuum that you feel, and you have that angst, the German word called angst. Okay, the chapter alone, written by Sheila Barua, is mainly overtone of loneliness faced by a particular character called Anusuya. The character's name is Anusuya. Anusuya is a middle class woman and she lives in Bombay in one of the apartments, the busy city of Bombay, and she lives all alone in Bombay apartments. So the chapter name is Alone. Very well. And what happens to her? What she observes, and what are the thoughts that are going on in her mind, and what happens towards the end to her life. An omniscient narrator, omniscient would mean an all knowing narrator, describes her life to us. That is how the narrative style of this particular chapter, arranged by Sheila Bilburu. I love the way she has arranged the story, the structure, and the plot. So I'm planning to tell you in the beginning about, I'm going to read the entire chapter for those lovely students out there who feel a little, bored to read, English chapters. So I hope I would be a little faster, but you should listen to me because I just don't want to lose the essence and the fragrance with which she has, described each and every sentence. So hope you would be patiently listening to the reading of this particular chapter, and after which you can listen to the, detailed summary, or in a way, a very structured summary of this chapter. So those who would like to skip the reading part of it, you can just move on further and go to the narration part, where in which I will be taking a short class on the summary and the various concepts that are described in the chapter. Okay, very well. Before my reading, I would like to just, speak a little about this particular author of this particular text, that is Sheila Bilbarua. Not that very scholarly achievements in her lifetime, not very, extraordinary, uh, you know, yeah, again, the achievements that she has done in her life. But she has been like any other woman, completed her, most of the women completed an MA in English from Madras University and worked 2 years as a copywriter in Thomson. Then later on, married to an Assamese planter and lived in Guwahati. While there, she taught English in a local college, and she retired in 1991. And now she is a grandmother of three, and she started writing 3 years ago at the age of 60. So she is a grandmother of three. Yes, she is the grandmother of three, a woman who had seen the other side of life. She began to write at the age of 60. So that is what I want you to look at, and how this person who has seen life and the other side of life, all the experiences that she has, with that, she has written this story. Okay. Let's listen to the story called Alone. 7:30 a.m. So we have the chronicle arrangement, rather chronological arrangement of it based on the timing. I would come to that when I explain it later. 7:30 a.m. Anusuya carefully put the rice, dal, and red pumpkin bharta into the hot case. She cooked early to avoid the heat that turned her kitchen into an oven. She waited for the familiar sounds to begin. 8 a.m. Time for the children next door to say their hurricane goodbyes and catch the school bus. Yes, it had started, the last minute tumult. The last minute tumult heard through the thin walls of her flat. You've forgotten your water bottle. Have you taken your library book? The excited clash of the collapsible lift gates and the bye drifting up through the well of the lift, the front door closing, and silence again. 8:30 a.m. She could smell the agarbatti Mr. Hedge in the opposite flat used for puja. It would be another half an hour before he left for his office. I may be late coming back today, and then the quick, impatient clash of the lift gates. 9:30 a.m. Her neighbor on her left was on her way to office. Nantita, the unmarried eldest daughter, had assumed the role of breadwinner of the family. Her retired father was ill with chronic asthma. They had a younger daughter, Moon, who had a friend. The walls were so thin that Anasuya could hear the heated arguments over the unsuitable lover, the sobbing, the roars of rage, the obstinacy. You can't ruin my life. I will marry him. There went Nandita, her quiet footsteps passing Anasuya's door, opening and closing the lift gates in her careful, meticulous manner. Each of them had a characteristic way of opening the lift, and Anasuya could recognize all of the absent-minded housewife Sarala, down the corridor to her right, always needed to close the gate twice, and Mrs. Bose, her neighbor, went through a hesitant, painstaking closing, while her children used a loud, jarring note, and Mr. Bose had steady, deliberate finality. Anasuya wondered how she sounded to others, or did anybody bother to listen? So we've been introduced a few of her neighbors. We have Mr. Hedge who lights the agarbatis. Then we have Nantita, that meticulous lady who goes every day, the breadwinner of the family. It means meticulously she closes the lift without making noise. That is our Nantita. Then we have Mr. Bose and her, and his children. Then these are the new neighbors the omniscient narrator introduces to us through Anusuya's neighborhood, in Anusuya's neighborhood. Ah, the smell of fish frying. So see the way, Sheila Barua, I just suddenly forgot the name of the person. She has brought in the five senses, attribution towards the five senses, the smell of the agarbatis, the smell of fish fry, the sounds that are happening, the different way each of the neighbors closes the lift gates, etc. So see the details with which she has been explaining it. I just don't want to lose these details by explaining it. I just go reading continuously. Ah, the smell of fish fry. The Bose family must have brought in their weekly quota of fish. They cooked in mustard oil, and she loved the sharp, tangy smell. Anasuya tried to stretch her housework to fit the endless leisure that awaited her. She could hardly afford the salary of a part time maid who came in at 5 p.m. But she looked forward to the cheerful chatter of Ramabai, So Ramabai is her maid, and she looked forward to the chatter of this particular maid. Ramabai, who did all her heavy housework and how did her shopping and now did her shopping as well. Ever since her cataract problem started, she had found it difficult to walk down the street on her own. So Anasuya had this cataract problem, a kind of a disease that affects your eyes. Eyesight reduces. There is a kind of a form that is formed, layer that is formed on the pupil, and you will have to do a laser operation in order to gain back the cataract. It's the eyesight. The cherished outings to the bank every alternate day. The few words exchanged with kind girl behind the savings counter. The couple of mithais shared together once in a while. All these had become pleasures of the past. The milk, bread, and provisions were delivered at the door. Bombay living was conveniently structured to suit the busy lives of its citizens, but no one had the time to exchange letters once a month. See the way Sheila narrates the story, and we come to know about Bombay and the city where she lives only at the second page of the narration. So the way of the narrative style is unique. Suddenly, a person is introduced, Anusuya, and what happens to the neighborhood is what is given to the reader. And only after 2 pages, we come to know that this person lives in Bombay in an apartment. And, excuse me, she had all these problems, the cataract problem, and she enjoyed her life outside before. But now she is confined in her own apartment, listening to the various nuances of sounds that are heard. Mr. Bose's asthma was getting worse. He was getting up every night in a lift, in a fit of coughing. She could hear him clearly through the thin bedroom wall. The poor man, how he suffered. Sometimes she felt like telling him about the cough remedies her mother used, but then Mrs. Bose was not very amenable to suggestions. Perhaps she felt like she was being criticized if she was given suggestions. So Anusuya did not give any suggestion, though she had a home remedy which her mother had told for which is very good for cough in order to alleviate cough or in order to heal cough. Ha! The sharp, shiny shower of the first rain. It was the beginning of monsoon. She would stand at the window and breathe in the moist, earth soaked smell that drenched the air. Again, the oculatory description that she gives, or the writer, she has been telling us about the fragrance of agarbatis, then the tangy smell of the fish fry, and we have again here the smell of the moist earth's smell, earth soaked in rain, that particular smell. Anusuya smiled at the thought. Now her clothes would take 2 days to dry, and her little flat would smell damp and dank. Even then, she enjoyed the rain. It cleansed the city of its hot dust, and the green emerged refreshed. It was her annual milestone, the feverish anticipation of the monsoon and then its noisy arrival. It was something to look forward to every year. 3:30 p.m. It was time for the children to come home. The excited collision of the gates, the vigorous ringing of the doorbells, and then the doors banging shut. You can just imagine how the children rushed back to their own homes. 4:30 p.m. The happy clamor of youth and their full-throated enjoyment of the moment wafted towards her. Ready, ready, Smita, Smita, here, I'm first, Arun, you cheat. The repeated summons for homework would stop all play in an hour. 5 p.m. Ramabai blew in with her usual chatter. Ramabai, the maid of Anusuya, blew in with her usual chatter, her umbrella dripping in rain. See the details that she has given. Hi, you should see the dirt on the street. Look at the bendy I bought you. So tender and fresh. Hear them snap. That breaking sound. She rushed through her work and left with some money to buy potatoes and a couple of tender green mangoes for the next day. 7 p.m. It was time for Nandita to come home. Yes, there was the careful closing of the lift gates. 7:30 p.m. Anusuya's testy neighbors returned. Testy would mean very, impatient and who makes loud noise and always get anger, pissed off for little reasons. Testy neighbors returns. Bad mood again. A curse accompanies the angry clash of the gates. It was silent again in her flat. Silence. Anasuya's story was common enough, middle class story. She remembered the time when, as a young girl in her first year college, she had fallen in love with Santanu. So we have the flashback here. Oh, those heady days of youth. So she had a lover called Santanu or Sandanu, whatever you call it. Those heady days of youth, the heart stopping excitement of anticipation, the lingering look, touch, smile on the brink of their marriage and of a life together. Her father fell ill with a kidney problem. Long years of drudgery followed, of evening classes, working to bring in the extra income while her father's medical bills had mounted and exceeded his meager pension. Sandhanu's brief visits had dwindled would mean reduced, as Anusuya was always tired, always busy, inevitably they had drifted apart. So both of them broke off because Anusuya couldn't give sufficient time to her lover. So she had struggled alone and the worry lines had deepened on her face. So we can see the worry lines or the, lots of marks on the face of people who worry a lot. After her father died, she had nursed her mother, by then old and frail. Sandhanu had long since disappeared from her life. Marriage had become an impossible illusion. When her ailing mother died, Anusuya was middle aged and life had sucked her dry of hope and dreams, replacing them with the weight of a resigned, inert acceptance. So, this particular line is very important. Anusuya was middle aged and life had sucked her dry of hopes and dreams. A life without hopes and dreams is a life worth not living for. A life without hope is a life that is not good for living. And her life has become one such. In the vacuum of a life, days passed by silently. She found vicarious pleasure in the happy coming home of others, even though there were none to come into her own. So Anusuya did not have her parents, did not have a lover. What she had is her loneliness and her home. And she found vicarious pleasure in the coming home of her neighbors, the sounds of children, the clattering of the lift gates, the smell of the fish fry in the neighborhood, and the smell of the rain, and all these kind of different happenings she was observing everywhere, and she lived life. Once in a while, Anusuya would open her front door to coincide with the striking of the lift gates so that she could exchange a greeting with Nandita or with Sarala. She happened to meet the neighbors in a blue moon day, like once in a while. And Anusuya did not ever strike a conversation with them. 4:30 a.m. So we have the 7:30 to 7:30 description of a daily life routine, or we call it an itinerary of a life, very clearly given to us by the narrator. Now we are going, and we also got a kind of a description about the background of her life. The lover that she had, the life that she enjoyed in her college days, the sudden tragedy of father falling ill, mother dying, and the whole. Responsibility of the family falls on her, lover goes away, and father dies, mother dies, and she all alone. Now, narrator takes us back to a one-day description of a life. It again begins from 4:30 a.m. in the morning. 4:30 a.m. when the muezzin called Allahu Akbar. The next day, Anusuya woke up completely. Further sleep eluded her, so there is no sleep for her. The empty hours stretched ahead like a road without milestones. Empty hours stretch ahead like a road without milestones. There is nothing that she could achieve in her life. There is nothing that she has to prove to anyone. She's just living her life so very, serenely and calmly. Loneliness everywhere, and she's enjoying the loneliness. I don't know how many of us enjoy loneliness, but they say that we should spend at least 5 to 10 minutes all alone every day in our lives in order to understand ourselves. Well, let's get back. Would her life have been any different with Santanu? So there are lots of thoughts that are going on in her mind. So the narrator could go into the mind of Anasuya's brain and decode the thoughts and give it to us. Like, would her life have been any different with Santanu? The might have beens, the could have beens, might have beens, would have beens are always used in order to show your regrets of a certain action that you couldn't perform. I could have been doing that when I was in the 10th standard. I could have been doing the, SSL's, science stream. I could have chosen the science stream. I could have, married this person. I could have been joined this particular college. So could have been, would have been always shows regrets. And Anusuya had lots of would have been in inverted comma in her life. 6 a.m. There was the swish of the mop against the floor. The cleaner was doing his morning chore. One day she thought she would just crumble to dust and no one would know or care. She would be swept away like dirt and disappear forever, unremembered and unwept. Her intuitions. So one day she would die and nobody would be there around her. Loneliness, and nobody would know that she is passed away, etc. etc. All kind of negative intuitions or thoughts coming into her. 9 a.m. It was a Monday. She would go to the post office to post her letter to America. We don't get any information regarding why she is posting to America, etc. Tuesday, so the next day, Tuesday, she took out the money to pay her electricity bill and her corporation tax. The apartment supervisor would come and collect it and pay it. Another Bombay convenience. You could get things done without moving from your apartment. Anasuya counted the amount carefully and placed it on the table in two separate piles. So she had counted the money of the electricity and kept it at the table, on the table. When the doorbell rang at 2 p.m., Anasuya hurried to greet the supervisor. But the door was thrust open with brute force that flung her against the wall. Two men, their faces covered, entered. The taller of the two shook her roughly and pulled the gold chain violently from her neck, breaking the clasp and leaving a long bleeding scratch behind. Anusuya was paralyzed with terror. Suddenly, she was expecting the supervisor to come in to collect the money, but who were the visitors? Two men with covered faces coming and pulling off the chain from her neck and pushing her down, leaving a scratch behind on her neck. The tall one took the keys tucked in at her waist and went towards her old grey steel cupboard. All of a sudden, a blood-red rage filled her. So she got angry. All of a sudden, she got some energy from somewhere, and she wanted to react. No, you will not take my mother's jewels, you bastards. I will not give you my hard-earned money. She flung herself ferociously at them, bit, scratched, hit, shrieked. They hit her again and again. She screamed for the last time. Her revolt and rage pierced the thin walls and reached her neighbors. Mr. Headgay, who had turned home early, Mr. and Mrs. Bose, who had come to the door to see off a visitor, they sounded the alarm and rushed to the door. When they broke open the door, the two men were still inside with Anusuya's lifeless body. Her brief moment of rebellion would never be known. She would become another statistics in the police records. The next day, the flat was full of people. The next day, the flat was full of people. See the irony. When Anusuya was living, she was all alone. There were no visitors, there were no neighbors to ask her about her, daily how she is, etc. But now, you see, the next day, the flat was full of people. All her neighbors wanted to help. Her impatient neighbor on her right, now subdued and concerned, offered to inform Radha. Nandita and her sister offered to wash and dress the body. No more Anasuya, the body. The apartment owners association said that they would organize the funeral. Everyone was there to help and commiserate. All those in the apartment block, some who had never seen Anasuya even once, were all there appalled by the tragedy. Anasuya lay in her flat, dressed in her best sari, covered with garlands of marigolds and rose petals. A small flat was full of people and the sounds of recorded bhajans. She would have been happy. Finally, she was not alone. Finally, she was not alone. 6 a.m., there was a swish of the mop against the door. The cleaner was doing the morning chore. 8 a.m., the children shouted their hurried goodbyes. 8:30 a.m., Mr. Headgay lit the agarbatti for his morning puja. 9:30 a.m., Nandita was on her way to office. That's it. The story ends there. How did you like the story? Did you see the way a human life went through torture, suffering, and how she found the way to overcome loneliness? But when she lived, nobody came to her. But when she died, there were people helping, there were people offering help, life. Every one of us in this world are alone. We might think that we have our parents, we might think that we have our siblings with us, we might think that we have our intimate and close friends or our loved ones or our spouses. I tell you, life is short and life is, temporary. Here, the philosophical underpinnings of the story I would like to tell you. Human beings are contingent beings. Even if we are not there, even if we are not in a place, the life will go on. There will be the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, and people would go on with their own life. So, when we are living our life, when we have given this short span of time, how much can we live our life? Let us not exist in our life, let's live our life to the full by having good dreams, having hopes, being optimistic, not pessimistic, you know, enjoying the life that you have, speaking to people, accepting the differences, knowing the uniqueness, celebrating life. That is a kind of a message that this short story will convey to you. Well, let's go into the summary in a gist in this session. I would like to look at the points that I have, how I have divided the entire chapter, and what are the different other concepts that we would like to look at. Yes. Okay, guys. So I would like to take you to the you know parted structure of this particular chapter called Alone. I hope it's visible to you. Hold on a minute. I'll just change the camera position. Okay, I think it's better. Let's look at this. So the chapter name is Alone. I hope it's audible. The chapter's name is Alone, which is by Sheila Naidra Barua. And I have divided the entire chapter into four different subheadings or different narrations. Like the first one, the one day itinerary, the one day itinerary of Anusuya. So what is itinerary? Excuse me. What is itinerary? Itinerary would mean the journey, the journey. So whatever the happenings and events that are taking place around. Okay, the one day itinerary, which is spanning from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. So very beautifully, very with the narrational beauty, it has been described by Sheila in her book. So the second portion is the flashback of Anusuya. The flashback of Anusuya. So we get a flashback wherein which she was a person who loved going out, etc. But she had a cataract problem, and she used to go out to the bank. She used to take a stroll every day towards the bank, and used to speak to that lady behind the savings counter and share mithais together. All these kind of, she was enjoying her life, but until the cataract has affected her. Afterwards, she was confined to her room. And that is the flashback of Anusuya. Rather, we also get a little more deeper. She had a lover called Santanu, and she enjoyed her college days, except for the the sudden sickness that her father faced and the demise of parents. And uh, she didn't spend time with her. She couldn't spend time with her lover Santanu, and Santanu breaks away from her. Uh, they go through a kind of a, and no more marriage in her life, and she is all alone, and life is sucked out of all dreams from her life. And let's move on to the third position, wherein Anusuya's personal routine. After the background, again the narrative style goes to Anusuya's personal routine. A particular day, how does Anusuya spend? So she gets up early morning at 4 a.m. when she hears the reflective sound of the Allahu Akbar from the nearby mosque. And by 6 a.m. She hears the swish of the mop against the door. All these kind of nuances are conveyed in the story. And the fourth one, the last scream and the funeral. The last part we see, she is expecting this electrical supervisor or apartment supervisor to come and collect the money in order to pay the electricity bill. But two, burglars come in with covered faces and attacks Anusuya and takes her off her jewelry from her neck and gets the key of the cupboard and tries to steal. Anusuya gets enraged, angry, and Anusuya rushes to them, bites, hits, scratches, screams, tries all that she can in order to overcome them. But both of them hits her again and again, and she bleeds. And there is the last scream that is echoed all through the apartment. Mr. Bose's family hears, what Headgay hears, Headgay family hears, and all of them rushes to the door. And they find the scene where there are these two burglars standing over there, and there is the lifeless body of the Nandita lying down over there. And later on, there is another scene of a funeral that is coming in. During the funeral, we find the entire apartment is filled with people, especially Anasuya's flat. It's completely filled with people, and there are many people. Nandita washes her body and drapes them with her new sari. There is the particular testy neighbor of hers comes and offers all kind of information, and the association of the apartment conducts a funeral. That is the entire story. The routine starts 7:30 a.m. People get up, children goes to the college, to schools, and you know what? Nandita goes to the work, etc. narration ends. Beautiful short story. If you haven't listened to my narration, please go back and listen to the narration and then come back to this so that you would understand. So the narrative uniqueness I would like to deal here. I don't know whether you are able to see it. Yep. Narrative uniqueness. Here we have first one, the nuances of description on sounds. The nuances of description on sounds. Anusuya, when she is all alone sitting, she looks at what happens around her. She looks at the way each and every person in her neighborhood, or not in her, the neighbors of hers comes and closes that good old lift. The way they close, there are beautiful description. Each and every one, shuts very fast. Another one slowly and meticulously. Still others with a jarring note, etc., etc. So the observance that she gives, and the and another one is the five senses, activating of five senses. The reader, one who reads the short story, feels that that reader hears so many sounds, and the reader smells lots of fragrance and smells. The smell of the rain, the earth-soaked, moist smell of the rain, the fish fry smell with the mustard oil, the tangy smell that Anusuya feels, and again the head cake when he lights the agarbatti for the puja. All these kind of nuances of description, which makes the short story really rich and very interesting to then we have at the end that fatalistic phone, which is slowly drafted by Sheila Barua. What is a satire? A world that is rushing for their own life, a world that is not looking at others and what's happening around. Always, sometimes does not find, who is the other in the other room, especially in a city called Bangalore, where in which we have this flat life, FLAT. I would like to use a fun flat life, flat culture. Flat culture would mean it could be a 30-story building and you don't know who is your neighbor. You know, where in which your lifestyle itself has become flat. Though you are in a flat, your lifestyle becomes flat because you don't know the people around you. And what happens? You don't know if a person dies only after 5 days. When the sting comes, you sometimes it realize that is a pathetic circumstances that we come across. So here, Sheila Barua is trying to convey, let us open our eyes, let us open our five senses, live our life to the full, help people around us. There are people who feel loneliness. There are people who feel there is nothing to achieve in their life and they find despair in their life. Your small smile, your lovely smile, maybe a small act of kindness would make their life beautiful. Let us not have many Anusuyas around us. But few things of Anusuya we can also imitate. Anusuya was a person who spent time for herself sometimes. Anusuya was a very, very keen observer. She had a very keen observation power. She could enjoy whatever is around her. How many of us enjoy whatever is around us? You know what? I'm enjoying the empty class in front of me. But there is a kind of a little sadness at the corner of my heart because I'm not able to see my students and the vibrant noise that they make in the class, the way they react, means answer, and the uniqueness that and the hope that you find in their eyes, all these things. So, but you find happiness in everything and live your life. When people are alive, be with them, care for them, give them what they require. After, when they have gone, it's of no use. Hope you have understood the chapter called Alone. Concept of loneliness, which many writers never explore, is being taken by Sheila Barua, and very, very beautifully and very vividly she has brought in the ideas. And enjoy studying this lesson and understand the characters, and then you're ready for the exam. And take the you know, values that are embedded in it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you.